Hello and welcome to the Completely Machinima podcast. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the host today. My name is Phil, and with me is Tracy Harwood, Ricky Grove, and Damien Valentine.
Hello.
So today we are talking about a film that Ricky picked called Artists of SL. SL meaning Second Life. Ricky, tell us a little about it.
Sure. It's Artists of Second Life by Teal, Aurelia. Second Life always gives you unusual, interesting names. I thought that was a good one. I chose this film because, well, it was short and it's very well made. It's a promo for those who use Second Life to create art. And I think it's quite ingenious. The narrator of the film asks, who inspires you? And then a series of Second Life artists and presumably their works are included afterwards. It ends with the quote, "Be brave enough to use it." It shows both the power and the limitations of Second Life. All the characters are somewhat idealized and perform the kinds of animations we see in 100 Second Life machinima. But overall, I think the film is worth a look. The editing is particularly good and the style is engaging. Teal Aurelia has a nice video on her editing process that she uses, along with a music video on her Vimeo site. This is a director I'd like to follow in terms of her talent and her creativity. We'll be sure to provide a Vimeo link to her channel. Second Life has always been a sort of, always had mixed reactions to Second Life. On one hand, it can do some things that no other platform can. It can show and do things. And then on the other hand, it can become the most infuriating cliches of idealized people with the same animation and physical mechanics shown over and over again with the same subjects. This one, although it has, like I said, it has both the good parts of Second Life and the bad parts of Second Life. But I think overall, it's an interesting way to promote art. I like the ideas behind it, and I think it's well presented. What did you guys think?
One of the things that stood out to me was that the characters obviously rendered in Second Life, but they're obviously against a blue or green screen because the background footage is all from Cyberpunk 2077. I played that game to death, so as soon as that first shot appeared, I know exactly what that is. But it's done in a way that, unless you look really closely, the characters look like they belong in that environment. It doesn't look like you just slapped one engine of footage over another. They actually blend really well. So there's a lot of editing energy went into editing that together. So now that you've mentioned that there's a sort of behind the scenes video to this, I need to go back and watch that to see how she did it. I thought it was a good choice.
It's not a behind the scenes video, but she talks about her editing process in general.
Oh, okay. I still need to go back and watch it
yeah.
To see what she did, her whole process.
Yes,
I thought
she shows her green screen technique.
Okay, but blending the two, Second Life and Cyberpunk together, I thought that was an interesting choice, and it worked really well.
Yeah, I knew there was compositing going on, but I have not played Cyberpunk, so I didn't recognize where from. It's not that the compositing was done very well. Like there weren't, green fuzzies around anyone's head or anything that I noticed. But I could just tell from the quality of some of the depth of some of those renders that, okay, that's not something Second Life can do. I know that from having spent a lot of time in there years ago. So I knew that there was compositing going on, but it was very well done. And frankly, I've long thought that there's two keys to where you could get something really good quality out of Second Life. And one is use compositing liberally, because the characters can be very interesting, and you could also composite certain props if you wanted to, and let some other engine do the backhaul work on the background. And the other thing is editing. This thing had both. Done very well. The editing made this. I would say the not downfall, but the weak side of many a SL production is lingering on shots. Well, frankly, this is true of many engines, isn't it? This is true of the Sims as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
You linger on a shot instead of covering over Movie Storm. New Movie Storm video makers would do this a lot. If there's an awkward animation, cut around it, plan your
around
shots
it.
accordingly,
Exactly.
and you can end up, you keep just the good bits. And Second Life, it's the same thing. And this video does that exceptionally well. I found it very enjoyable. I feel like I wish, as we spoke about quite a few months ago when we were talking about Second Life and how Second Life tends to promote itself, that they cater to certain audiences only, and they cater less to artistic audiences, in my opinion, looking at their marketing materials. This is Second Life's true hidden strength, is artistic work. And it's easy to forget that, because for every Laney Voom that you have, there's 100 be something more than you are in Second Life themed movies, which is just like, okay, we get it, okay. So yeah, I liked, this obviously wasn't a story. So I'm not comparing it in that way, but in terms of making use of Second Life as an engine for generating good looking visuals in conjunction with other tools to amplify the strengths of each, just brilliant choice. Yeah. And wonderfully done. Probably the only reason that this isn't picked up as a promo of Second Life is because of those enhancements from those other tools. But for the purposes they're using it, it's perfect. It's great.
Did you find it disturbing at all?
I did find it disturbing. Yes.
We're talking about 9/17, the film that we talked about last week.
Right.
Yeah, I found it disturbing. I think this is a really interesting short about Teal Aurelia's inspiration as an artist in the form of characters in Second Life. Now, I had a little bit of a look at her background. She's a CG animation student, recently graduated, I believe. And the video, to me, appears to be part of her portfolio, as I think what she's setting up to do is freelance work, which is about creating machinimas for Second Life creators. She's got a really interesting Flickr account with some fascinating photos on it, which I would guess are partially the underpinning impetus for the film. Now, I'll come back to photography, but what I will say is, as we've sort of said in the past, photography is fast becoming one of the most used alternative capture mediums in virtual worlds and games. And I think that's kind of partly what's going on here too. What's not so clear here, I think, is the aspect of the characters that are so inspirational to Teal. I'm surmising that this is actually an homage to those characters, but it's not about what they look like. It's about what they do in the virtual space, which is perhaps what she normally captures. So to me, this is like a runway show or a fashion show or a beauty parade, where the music complements the presentation and shows this kind of snapshot of characters and their looks, but actually they're kind of out of sync with the environment, which you guys have both picked up on as well. And I quite like these kind of steamy poses to camera and then kind of some kind of movement. I think it's really interesting. Also, that since Second Life is all about community, this whole film to me doesn't actually give a sense of community as such, but it's a collective of individuals, if that kind of makes sense. The point being here that they're not necessarily folks that you would normally find in the same space or at the same time. And I'd be really interested to hear more about the nature of the inspiration beyond these images. but that detail isn't in this film.
Mm.
So for me, it's
Good
a
point.
really intriguing kind of style of capture. It's sort of halfway between machinima and photography. And I say that because I'm guessing that these folks have lives in Second Life, but we don't know what it is. I did also look at the making of video that Teal has posted about how she created this, and was really interested to see that green screen has been used, which kind of made me wonder, maybe it's because of that separation of character from scene, that's kind of why it came over more of this sort of beauty parade.
Yeah.
Plus, there's one thing that I'll mention, because ever since Ricky mentioned it a few months ago, it's something that I've noticed more of. You know, that kind of sliding across the ground plane when walking. Well, it's something obviously that Second Life creators don't even seem to notice, but it's in here too. And I wonder, because green screen's been used, I would have thought it would probably have been relatively easily addressed. But then again, I was thinking, maybe if it's so much a part of Second Life, maybe what there was is this kind of deliberate decision to leave that kind of floor sliding in here. And there's a scene where you see that really, really clearly. But overall, I thought it was upbeat, it's fun, it's really quite an interesting cultural format. Not really sure what to call it, but very interesting in its format, I think.
Well, your comment that it was a combination of machinima and photography, I think, is well taken. That's exactly what it is. And I like the trend towards street photography and virtual worlds. I think that's fascinating. I've been following it for months and months and months, and it's really interesting. I think that's probably part of the appeal of the film for me.
Yeah, I can get that. Yeah,
I think the ideas are not particularly unique. They tend to be more on the level of a Hallmark card. Find inspiration and use it. But then again, I'm a bit cynical when it comes to that sort of thing, so it's hard to convince me of that kind of thing. However, in support of that idea, I think the film was just great in supporting and pushing that idea. But you're right, it didn't really get it. It tends to be more on the surface. If you start looking at the depth of it, you start seeing it's really doesn't give you all of the information that you need in order to prove those statements that are being made.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, I think I've realized now that because I didn't watch this. I looked at this as an advertisement, and I mean that purely in terms of the form. So like I wasn't looking for deeper story, or and I think that's why my eyes forgave the feat. It wasn't just because I've been in Second Life and have gotten used to it. It also was, well, stuff like that's done in advertisements. It's kind of surreal and they're almost disembodied, and there's layers of compositing going on. And I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe this is a demo piece or a piece of a resume, like you mentioned, Tracy, but also an excuse to kind of to give shout outs to people that inspired, but not looking to tell or even allude to their whole stories or something deeper. It's more about showing some technique. Because I for whatever reason, those are things that would have jumped out to me, the technical things that you mentioned, Tracy, as well as the lack of a foundational story of some kind. And I find that I didn't even look for those things. And I think it's because I immediately thought this is an advertisement. And like much of the advertisements that I watch in real life, I really didn't care what was being advertised either. I just am a fan of the form. Like when an ad is executed right, I don't care if it's for Levi's or Bush. I don't care, you know? So yeah, that's
well, see, I'm different.
Really interesting.
when advertising comes on, I immediately start shouting at it when it's irrational or it makes claims that
Yeah.
are completely unsupported. I just laugh and jeer at it. That's a lot of fun.
That's just the
Especially on,
917 terahertz signal coming out of the TV
There-
and into
there you
your
go.
brain.
But
There
on,
it is.
on Hulu in particular, you'll be watching something and then an ad will come up that's a minute and 17 long. And it's just completely irrational because your mind is in the mindset of the series that you're watching, right? And then suddenly they're hawking some sort of drug and they're telling you that death could result from it. It's a possibility that death could, and you're like, what the hell are you? Get out of here. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. The
my
best with Hulu is when they clearly don't have enough advertisers for that slot. So you see that same death drug ad
Oh,
6 times in the 44-minute episode, you know.
oh,
Yeah, that's my favorite.
You know, I've
Yes.
given up on terrestrial TV because I can never get into whatever it is that's between the adverts. And I always look at the adverts now as the main show. Because they're a minute and a half, I can just about keep my attention
Yeah.
for that long. But
Sometimes the creativity is more evident in the advertising than
Absolutely.
it is in the actual
Absolutely.
content.
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway,
So
I've always been a fan of the short form, and commercials are sometimes moments where some real artistry can be displayed. Most of the time it's mindless garbage, you know, but occasionally I used to, back when the Clio Awards were always advertised on TV, which is the annual awards for, you know, the best of, there's some interesting stuff that happens there.
Yeah.
And actually many directors that we now know of as film directors got their start in that, is my understanding. And many that I am fans of, I research their lives and find out that's where they started, is that short form. And of course I love short form comedy as well, you know, comedy sketches and stuff. So anyway, good pick, Ricky.
Well, promotional work and informational info ads are really great forms for machinima. And I think there's a lot of things you can do with them. I've been working with a new editor that I'm really enjoying. I used to create our 2 of our videos for the November series that we did called Create Studio Pro. And it's an editor that is a cut down version of video editor, but it's clearly focused on the short form, the minute to 2-minute piece. And not only does it give you pre-formatted advertising for all kinds of things, YouTube creators. In fact, that's the audience, is the sellers and marketers and personality types in YouTube and eBay and all of that. But it also gives you music, free music for all of them, tons and tons of music, and a very easy way to animate and put things together. I really enjoy it. And so if you're thinking of putting together a promotional video and you're doing Second Life or Half-Life or something like that, it might be interesting to get the content from the game and then check out Create Studio Pro, because it's super cheap and it's a perpetual license, so you don't have to get a subscription to it. And it's
Is
got
that
plugins.
downloadable software, Ricky, or is it cloud?
Yes, it is. It's
Oh,
a
it's downloadable?
downloadable software. I think it was like $67 for.
Yeah. The website's
whole thing.
createstudio.com. I just looked it up because I'm
I
going
like
to take
it.
a look at that.
I mean, it's got some limitations and some
course.
problems, but I found whenever a piece of software excites my imagination, I'm already for it. And very few things keep me from realizing the things that I want to do. So in connecting your comment about this being a piece of advertising is good. If you're a machinima filmmaker, Create Studio Pro might be a good piece of software to look at to create those short pieces.
All right, that'll wrap up this episode. Thanks for tuning in with what's this podcast called? Completely Machinima. Be sure to give us your feedback
for 2 years.
I know. Be sure to give us your feedback over at completelymachinima.com and check out our blog with all the latest news and developments going on in the world around machinima. Thanks for tuning in.
See you
See you next
later.
time.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.